struck him out.
2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk him off. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno. Joining me, excuse me, I'm all over the place, is Anthony. And I think I was stuck in between saying I see a lot of our regulars in here in the chat already. So hello to everybody. Anthony, a nice and easy Sunday for you so far?
Oh, yeah. Nice and easy Sunday, just looking at the split squad results and, things are moving along. So yeah, all good this Sunday.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm filling in for Jeff tonight, and it's a good show to be doing. We had 2 baseball games today happening at the same time, as Anthony mentioned. Split squad. The Dodgers played the White Sox at Camelback Ranch, and then they sent a group over to Hohokam Stadium to play the Athletics. Interestingly enough, and we'll kind of get into it, like Dave Roberts went with the road team, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I feel like he has done it also in the past, and it's always kind of funny to see how a manager chooses. And Dave, credit to him, he's not taking the easy way out of wanting to just stay at Camelback Ranch. He said, no, put me on the bus, or he drove himself over there with Mookie and some other regulars. And we'll get into all of that. A big thank you to everybody who's joining us live. I know the Lakers are going to be playing the Clippers here soon, and it's Oscar Sunday. We're doing this show a little bit earlier because I want to make sure I get Anthony off in time so that he could see if his movie picks end up winning tonight or not. And speaking of the Lakers, as you guys know, our sister site is Lakers Nation. If you have not seen, we have a really great opportunity for fans that we're extremely excited about. And it's we're doing thanks to Crypto.com. We've partnered with them. Yes, that is who is on the building's name, previously Staples Center. And Crypto has their own suite inside the arena. And they reached out to us and said, hey, let's partner on a contest. Some of your followers can join us. And so if you're following Lakers Nation on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, you've seen us promoting this link. Click it. You'll see a sign up box there. Sign up, first name, last name, email address, and then also go to Crypto.com. Submit the same information there. Very important. Be sure you use the same email address on both entries. And we're going to end up picking random winners, and you'll win 2 tickets to join some of our staff in watching the Lakers play the Suns on Sunday, March 16th. And so some of us will be there as well. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. They sent us video of their suite, and it's nice. It's branded obviously for Crypto.com, and it's a lot nicer than, kind of just your average sort of run of the mill suite that you might expect at the arena. Yeah. Hawaiian Kira, she's excited. Yeah. You guys, like, as long as you live, general Southern California area, you're eligible to enter. Like I said, the big key is just be sure to use the same email address with both entries, both on LakersNation.com and both through Crypto.com, because we're going to need to match that to verify it before we can award you a ticket. Winners will be chosen at random, and each winner will get 2 tickets. So you and a guest will be able to join us. So definitely be sure to do that. And if you guys have any questions about that stuff, like I can answer, follow it up at the end of the show. But for now, let's get into Dodger baseball, which I'm sure the majority of the group is here for. Yeah. Anthony, you mentioned it, the 2 split squad games. We got to see Shohei Ohtani, Kirby Yates, Tanner Scott, Tyler Glasnow, Teoscar Hernandez hit his first home run. Freddie Freeman hit another home run, second game in a row. We did not get to see what was happening over in, I believe, Mesa. Is that where the Athletic, is that their technical city?
Hohokam is where the Cubs used to play.
Right.
And they're in Mesa for several years. And then the A's place was also in Mesa, and it was a dump. And then they moved to Hohokam, which I think actually got renovated. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if the Athletics moved from a bad spring training stadium, I'm a little worried. Like, what are we going to describe Hohokam as? The Cubs, real quick side tangent. The Cubs were smart to sort of, and I say this tongue in cheek, to get out and build Sloan Park. Have you had a chance to visit that one yet? I know it's newer.
Yeah, it's pretty new. I have seen it. I haven't seen a game in it, but I've kind of gone through it. It is super nice. It's one of the nicer spring training facilities there. Put a lot of money into it. Like I said, they were at Hohokam for a long time in Mesa, and that place was just kind of run down. It was old. Hohokam has been there for a long time. And so, they would host other baseball leagues and things like that there for years. So, I think the Cubs sort of used that as a stopgap for a while they were building this new place. And that place is really nice.
Yeah, and Sloan, and what works for the Cubs is that they're the only team that plays there, and so it's basically a Wrigley Field, which is a nice touch. But anyway, enough about the stadiums. James Outman, I don't know if you didn't see it. We have a recap of the game on our website, DodgerBlue.com, along with the game that the Dodgers played at Camelback. James Outman and David Bote had themselves a little bit of a day. Outman hit an RBI triple. Bote hit another home run. They combined to drive 4 runs in. The Dodgers ended up pulling away late. Anthony, anything stick out to you with either of these 2 games? As I mentioned, Freddie Freeman did hit a home run for his 2nd game in a row. He also played first base. It was his first time doing that this spring.
Yeah.
But what sort of caught your eye from the 2 games today?
Freddie looks like he hasn't missed a beat since October. That's nice to see, even with the foot thing going on. Tyler Glasnow's outing was really nice. I didn't get to watch any of the games, but I was following along online. It looked like he looked pretty good. So that's promising, obviously. He looks healthy. And it was nice to see James Outman, I think, kind of start to find some good luck here. He's kind of had a rough go of it a little bit so far. So I don't think he's a guy that makes the opening day roster. But it would be great if he turned that around and made it a competition late in camp. So kind of rooting for him to do so, just so we can sort of see what our best look might be come opening day. So it was nice to see him kind of break out a little bit.
Yeah, and the Outman conversation we're certainly going to get into here in a few minutes. You mentioned Glasnow. He did retire the first 6 batters faced. He then gave up a leadoff double in the 3rd inning, and then the Dodgers pulled him out. I think he ended up at like 22 pitches or something like that. So relatively short, but as you know, and we'll hear, Dave Roberts and the players, the pitchers themselves talk about it. A lot of it is with the quote unquote up down. So the fact that he even sat down after 2 innings, waited for the 3rd to start, went back out there, even though he only faced 1 batter, that still comes with a lot of value for the pitchers as they continue to sort of stretch themselves out. And look, the Dodgers, they're off tomorrow. They're on Monday. If you're watching us live, it's Sunday night right now. Monday is an off day for the Dodgers. It's their first and only break in their Cactus League schedule. And then it's 8 games in a row. And then you're going to blink and they're going to be on a plane to Tokyo. And Blake will be right behind them on a plane to Tokyo as well. So there's not a lot of time. And that's why we're going to get into Sasaki a little bit. You're going to see maybe some of these starting pitchers. It already happened with Tony Gonsolin last week pitching out of the bullpen. But we're going to see some piggybacking because there's just not enough time for these guys to get ready. And, it's, that's where things go. And speaking with opening day fast approaching, as you can see here, if you're watching us on YouTube, the banner alludes to some roster cuts that the Dodgers made today. And that included Nick Frasso getting optioned, and Carlos Duran, Julian Fernandez, Justin Jarvis, Ryan Ward, Justin Dean, Zaire Hope, and Josue DePaula were reassigned to minor league camp. So those 8 guys are now in minor league camp. It's important to remember they're eligible to still keep playing in Cactus League games. This is just a part of the process of thinning out the roster.
They'll be called back up at, here and there to get some at-bats with the big league camp for sure.
Excuse me, I apologize. And, Zaire Hope, Anthony, did you get to see? He's opened some eyes. He's obviously a name that has stuck out and been ranked on Dodgers prospects list.
Yeah.
And he's certainly sort of lived up to that billing so far.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, no pun intended, literally no pun intended, but there's a lot of hope there, I think, with him. He's a type of player I think that the Dodgers haven't had in a while with some of the tools that he brings. You hope that he can, that he's going to be able to hit enough at the big league level that he's going to be able to stick around as an everyday player once that time does come for him. But yeah, I think that I'm excited about him. Him and DePaula, they whet the appetite a little bit because I think they could really transform what this roster looks like in the near future. That they're going to have some veterans on this team that are going to be around for a while. And if you can bring those guys up at some point in the next 2 or 3 years, it really gives the offense a little bit of a different look and makes it a little bit more dynamic, I think. Because you're going to have guys like maybe Freddie toward the tail end of that, if they really do come up, Mookie, obviously Shohei, and he's going to be obviously playing both sides of the ball, so I think there's going to be some need a little bit for athleticism on the roster. And I think those guys can give it to them. They've been impressive so far, even if the results haven't always been there, you can see what the tools look like.
And I think even with Hope, he's also made a couple of impressive catches in both corner outfield positions this spring. And so that was obviously nice to see. The other thing too, oh man, I lost my train of thought where I was going with it. We were discussing Zaire Hope, Josue DePaula. Somebody replied to us on Twitter today saying it was a tweet about DePaula saying he predicts he's going to be starting in center field before the season ends or something to that effect. And there was some back and forth. There was a reply, and then the fan that told us that said, well, maybe it's partly to blame because I've had a few beers here at Camelback. And I said, okay,
there you go.
That would explain kind of the liquid courage, if you will.
There you go.
But yes, as you hope, DePaula, even Frasso, like there have certainly been reasons to be, if not hopeful, as it's a kind of spin off of you, optimistic with the future. And that's obviously something that Andrew Friedman constantly is discussing is, the Dodgers are looking to obviously win the World Series this year, win a World Series next year, but several years down the line still remain in contention. Real quick, I see a couple questions here I want to address. JT says he's in Arizona for today and Tuesday's game. He wants to know if there'll be practice tomorrow morning. I'm not 100% sure. I know the Dodgers, like players will probably, at least some of them will be in there getting treatment or just going through workouts. I forget if that means Camelback opens the backfields to fans. I'm not 100% sure on that. So at the very least, the White Sox side will be open. So you could go in through there and try to walk over to see if there's anything going on with the Dodgers, but probably really hit or miss tomorrow with a much lighter group than normal.
Yeah, they try to give, especially the veterans, they try to give them the day off like fully and say like, unless you need to for some reason, kind of don't show up. That's typically how it goes. So I'm with Matt, kind of hit and miss there. The fields will probably be open, but there may not be much going on.
Yeah, and the other thing, Michael, I know you're in here all the time. He's asking about our intro video. Yes, we have been working on it. It is being worked. It has. There've been edits and things like that. I do apologize. My hope was for us to have it finished well before spring training started. Unfortunately, there have been other behind the scenes things on the business side that we have had to tend to and sort of took a little bit of priority. So I do apologize on the delay there, but yes, we are certainly working on getting that video updated for you all. All right, our next topic, you mentioned James Outman. Dave Roberts, I thought, had an interesting comment, I believe, on Saturday. He was asked about the Dodgers roster, and it is largely set. But second base and center field appear to sort of be the two question marks. And not only that, but they're connected to each other.
Yeah, they're related. Yeah.
Anthony, before spring training started, if I had asked you, who do you expect would be playing center field, what would your answer have been?
I think the question was asked of me before spring training started, or very early on at least. And I said, some of this was, I think, like me wish casting. But I think I said it was Edmund in center field and Kim at second base. So obviously that still could happen, but it's still, I think it's still too murky right now. I think at least for the way I'm looking at this is like they're waiting for one of those fringe guys to break out, right? Like Edmund is in one of those spots essentially. They're looking for one of the other guys, whether that be Pages or Outman or Kim or somebody to say, you know what, we're playing well enough now that you can trust us on opening day in one of these two positions. And I just think that the coaching staff's probably not there yet with any of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was firmly in the camp that Tommy Edman was going to be playing center field. Once, it was evident that Mookie Betts was moving to shortstop for this season, I thought, okay, then the Dodgers will put Edman in center, especially like you mentioned with the signing of Ha-Seong Kim. Sort of seemed to make sense that way. As we sit here now, Edman has played in 6 Cactus League games. I'll let you guess. How many of those have come at second base?
Ooh. 1?
5.
5, yeah. I mean, Yeah, I clearly pay a lot of attention to the positional
Spring
lineup
training.
chart.
It's spring
Yeah.
training.
Yeah, I think that this is what that says to me is that Kim has a chance, and I know they've moved Kim around. They're looking at him in different positions also because of his athleticism. But I think that they are really trying to get a lot of looks at Pages and Outman, and whoever else might be sort of in that mix that we didn't see coming. And so hoping that one of those guys stands out, because I think maybe that if they had their druthers, Kim is a guy who doesn't necessarily play second base every day, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's sort of more and more what it's looking like, where I think going into camp, we kind of figured it was sort of second base or nothing for Kim. And clearly they don't see him that way. They see him as a guy that they can move around, which points to why they actually went after him too, because I think they probably had that idea from the start.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do wonder, I don't know if we would ever necessarily get the full sort of truth, if you will, from be it the front office or Dave Roberts on what they anticipated with Kim and where things sort of stand. I thought it was pretty telling that in the past handful of days, Dave Roberts did sort of acknowledge and not rule out the fact that Kim would begin the season in the minors. Because as much as that was a possibility, because it wasn't written into his contract, it wasn't a likelihood that I was counting on. But given, as I said, Tommy Edman, like that surprised me that he has played, like I said, 5 of his 6 games so far this spring have come at second base. To your point, I think that does sort of tell me that Edman is going to be playing second base for the most part when the regular season begins. Yeah. And center field, I guess boils down to a competition between James Outman and Andy Pages. And the irony here is I think it's safe to say those two players specifically are split, are like opposites of each other. You have Outman's glove that you can trust out there.
Yeah.
His bat, we've seen it. He did hit an RBI triple today. He had 2 hits overall today, but his bat has been on the decline or struggled, however you want to word it, since his rookie season. Then you have Andy Pages, who can tear the cover off the ball. But in center, defensively, contrary, although Dave Roberts did tell us that he likes Pages in center field and he thinks he's gotten a lot better defensively.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just Dave, backing his players. But my read on these two is, like I said, these two guys are like opposites. So the Pages, you have the bat, but I think there are questions with his glove.
Yeah, I think that if camp broke today, I think Pages is your center fielder and Edman is your second baseman. I think it kind of feels, and I could be wrong about this, but it sort of feels like center field might be Pages to lose now at this point. I think they gave Outman a legitimate chance. He struggled, to get it going. And so I think they're looking at Pages as the guy. And then just saying, yeah, we can. I think they have the luxury, the roster flexibility to really, for the majority of the season, sort of play with those two positions. And so just because you see somebody there on opening day or playing throughout the first week or the first month doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be what it is for the rest of the season. I think they've given themselves that luxury. Again, another reason why maybe they signed Kim, even if he doesn't start in the big leagues, he gives them that optionality. So yeah, I would, my money now would be on Pages in center field and Edman in second, just given the way Outman and Kim have performed to this point. But things can change, but I do think that's sort of where things are leaning in terms of like how I'm seeing stuff.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing from you then is when Mookie Betts is moved from from shortstop to second base, then there's going to be more dominoes being pieced together.
Oh boy. Oh, we got to go there, huh? Look, I really think it has to be a disaster class at shortstop for them to move Mookie again. I really do think that. I think that they sort of feel like maybe they owe it to him to say, you know what, this position's yours. We're going to quit kind of jerking you all over the field. Like, go and focus on that. That place is yours. Don't worry about it. At least for now, things change, but at least for now. And then I think that's why those two connected positions at second and center field, end up going hand in hand in terms of like whoever wins one position, and then the other one becomes, the no-brainer. Like, okay, well then Edman will be at that other one.
We have our first super chat of the night, so I want to get to this. John, thank you for this. He says, Outman gives more than Pages, Edman now at second base, and Bote on the bench. This is so Edman at second base. We agree on. We feel like it's not necessarily where I would play him. I think, although I believe he won his Gold Glove at that position, so it does seem to be, there's some merit in putting him there. I still liked him in center field. If they weren't going to do shortstop, I liked Edman, his speed and versatility, kind of in center field, which is kind of ironic because that's one reason why Dave Roberts said Kim is being thrown out there because of kind of the speed factor and the way he can go get the ball hit to either side of him in the gap. What about Outman gives more than Pages? I mean, again, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that because the bigger discrepancy, Pages is closer to Outman, at least in passing, defensively, than I think Outman is closer to Pages in terms of hitting. I don't know if I explained that correctly.
The offensive gap between the two is bigger than the defensive
there
gap.
You go.
Is,
yes.
I think is what
Thanks.
you're saying.
Yes, thank you for cleaning that up for me.
Yeah, hey, I'm a writer, editor. I got you. I think you're probably right on that front. Because I think with Pages, I think some of the tools are there. He's not a speed guy, but he's not slow. He might not be the most athletic guy out there, but he's also not athletic. He can move around a little bit. He's just never really played that position. It takes a special talent to play that position and some experience, and he's been learning on the fly. We saw Gavin Lux, who was a very athletic player, not look good in center field. Center field will do that to you, even for the best athletes. And so, I'm sure Pages has been working hard and taking a lot of reps at that position. So I do think that gap has closed, but I would agree with you in that the offensive gap where Pages leads there is probably bigger right now than the defensive part of it. And I think for the Dodgers, I would guess that they're leaning will take the offense and sacrifice some of the defense versus the other way around.
Yeah, and I think part of that too might be the fact that Pages bats right-handed, and the Dodgers have a very left-handed heavy lineup. And so if he can bring some balance to it, as much as you trust Ohtani, Freeman, Muncy to hit left-handed pitchers, I think it still does sort of help. And maybe this is just the get off my lawn in me. I think it still does sort of help to have a little bit of balance there with the handedness of your position players. I think the biggest thing, to your point, yes, Pages is certainly working at center field. It's not as if, he's mailing it in and not out there during workouts. I think if he could just he has an instinct, and it happened when I was at Sloan Park when the Dodgers were playing the Cubs and a ball went over his head. 7 times out of 10, I feel like Pages' first instinct is to step in on a ball. And that is one of the first things you're taught as any outfield position. Your first step is back.
Yeah.
And so that's if he could break that habit, then we might eliminate maybe some of 15 to 20% of these fly balls that end up going over his head.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder if they just say, you know what, we're going to bite the bullet and we're going to play you deep here. And maybe that's why, if you do that, then having Mookie and Edman up the middle, or maybe sometimes it's Kim or whatever, giving a little bit of speed at those two positions, maybe can help with that. But I think if they really feel like it's a problem, because he got beat a lot that way last season, even if it wasn't necessarily a step, his first body movement might have been sort of like that, and you're beaten. That's all it takes sometimes. Maybe they just if they really say, you know what, you're going to be the guy there, maybe they just go with the defensive alignment early on where he has to play everything deep.
Yeah, that could be. The last part, John, this has been a great super chat. So again, thank you for that. Last part of this, Bote on the bench. So David Bote, obviously, like I said, he hit a home run today. He's been tearing the cover off the ball. He has a little bit of versatility, can play first base, third base, even some second base. Do you see he's the hot name right now? Do you see a scenario where he makes the Dodgers opening day roster? And keep in mind, I know you know this, but I want to remind everybody in the chat, because we've got a lot of love for David Bote. He needs to be added to the 40-man roster first.
Yeah.
So that is another obstacle. It's not just, include him on your opening day roster. There's one step before that. And that 40-man roster, as much as the Dodgers can free up space right now because of utilizing the 60-day injured list with all their injured pitchers, at some point, some of those guys, a good number of those guys are going to be ready to come back, and you're going to have to free up some space. Of course, knock on wood, you hope there aren't, other significant injuries along the way, but and in some sense that stuff does tend to work itself out. But at least for now, like that is another obstacle, I think, to Bote breaking camp with the Dodgers and being with them in Tokyo.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He's got an uphill climb still, even for as well as he's performed. Ideally, right, like Chris Taylor's not there, and then that opens up a spot for him. But Taylor's here right now. And as long as they don't move him, I'm guessing he breaks camp with the team. I would be a little surprised if this early, like let's say before opening, like before the home opener, let's say, if they just cut bait on Chris Taylor. I would be very surprised.
I agree.
And especially to make room for Bote. Like, that doesn't seem like something the Dodgers would do at least at this point. And sometimes injuries kind of help them work these things out. But let's assume health and let's hope for health. I think it's tough. I think it's tough for him to make this roster at this point, just because of who's already there.
Yeah, I agree. That big, and look, Bote is signed to a minor league deal. Those typically, especially a veteran like him, they have opt-out dates. It has not been reported. It's not, at least that I've seen, it's not been reported when his is. So maybe it is, in a couple months, and he says, okay, like, yeah, I will bide my time down in OKC to begin the season, kind of see what happens. But we could be looking at, as Daniel likes to remind us, another Brad Miller situation where he had a Bote is having a good spring. Brad Miller had a remarkable, unbelievable spring training. I think was it 2016 or something like that? It's been a good number of years now. And it looked like he should make the roster. There's, kind of similar to this where the roster was sort of set, but you could make a case for him. And he ended up opting out. I don't think he was going to. He ended up opting out before spring training ended and signed with I think the Guardians, or who were the Indians at the time. But
let's also our typical disclaimer of this is still spring training.
Yeah.
And the numbers are, can look very different during the first 2 weeks of the regular season, for a guy who might be tearing the cover off the ball now. So, important to understand that, but also there's no doubt that he's doing everything he can right now to earn a spot. I just think it doesn't necessarily mean that he makes the roster, because it's a numbers game at some point. And unless the Dodgers are willing to eat that Chris Taylor money, because I also think that's the only way they get him traded, then there may not be a spot for him. And maybe they say, look, we're going to send you to OKC. Bite your tongue on this a little bit. Give us some time. We're going to try to work out some of the other roster stuff that we have. And once we do that, like we're going to give you a hard look again, as long as you're healthy and performing at AAA, then, there may be a spot for you here. So a lot to still go into this, but yeah, the numbers game really work against a guy like that. And he knew that coming in. Like, these guys aren't dumb, right? Like, their agents and them discussed this. They figured, hey, this is a good situation with the Dodgers. Maybe they even discussed, if I have to start in the minors, that's not a terrible situation. There's a little versatility there positionally. So, maybe they thought that this was the best option of whatever options he did have. And understanding everything that went into this, he's not dumb. His agent's not dumb. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what the roster looks like. So I think right now we just kind of wait and see. But yeah, it's unfortunate that it can't be solely merit-based, just because it is what it is. It's a numbers game. It happens like this to every team in every camp.
Yeah, and I want to give credit to our guy Blake. When he was out at spring training with Jeff, he was part of a scrum with Bote, and he asked him about that. Were you attracted by how talented the Dodgers are? Were you deterred at all? And to Bote's credit, he said no. I want to win. And Bote gave a ton of credit to some ideas that the Dodgers hitting coaches presented to him, and he said they were a big reason for signing. And so, if you haven't seen that video, be sure, if you're with us on YouTube, once we're done here, just go to the kind of, archive, or wherever the rest of our videos are. I don't know what you want to refer to it as. And you'll see a bunch of interviews there. David Bote's up. Jeff got a bunch of one-on-ones that we're also publishing. We've gotten a few of them up, and we have more certainly coming. So if you haven't been to our YouTube channel, definitely check it out. Dodger Blue 1958. Subscribe. ring the notification bell, all that stuff. You'll get alerted as soon as when we do live shows and when we're posting these different interviews. All right, our next topic for tonight is Roki Sasaki. So he's his first spring training debut, if you will, came in a hybrid B game. Anthony, I know you and I have been around a lot. Hybrid B game, I have to admit, was new to me. I had heard the B game, I had heard of a simulated game. I had not heard of a hybrid B game, and then comes to turn out after watching, we have video up that Blake and Jeff got. It was basically a simulated game type thing where there were no fielder, or it was like live batting practice. There were no fielders, and it was Sasaki. I guess the biggest difference was in live BP, you face your own teammates. He was facing White Sox players, but what did you have? I could only laugh at the hybrid B game type thing.
Yeah. The term was new to me. The concept is not. Teams who share facilities have done this before. They don't necessarily, this one was brought to everyone's attention because it was Sasaki who was throwing in it. Typically, like they may do this like on a bullpen day, kind of like, hey, Tony Gonsolin, maybe he's a bad example because he's coming back from the injury, but somebody who's maybe going to make the rotation or something like that, hey, it's your bullpen day. These guys want to get their guys some live pitching. They want to get them some looks at an arm. You'll go throw 2 simulated innings there on the backfields. So I've seen that before. But yeah, the term when I first heard it, I was like, what is that? But what they're actually doing, it happens. Like I said, especially for teams who share a facility, they'll do that and kind of, hey, let's do each other a solid here. We need to get this guy facing hitters, and we have guys who want to look at live pitching. So that kind of situation. So it's nice that he's getting looks at other guys, and they're trying to make it feel as real as possible for him without getting him in a game at this point.
Yeah, and so I know, call it what you want, live BP, simulated game, B game, hybrid B game, which is what Dave Roberts went with. And I'm seeing it right now in the chat again, a lot of people were upset with how the Dodgers are handling Sasaki and sort of easing him in that way. I didn't necessarily agree with it. I thought it was fine. It sort of made sense. His Cactus League debut is now coming. It's on Tuesday against the Reds. But a wrinkle is Yoshinobu Yamamoto is starting that game against the Reds, and it is a night game for the Dodgers. Yamamoto, I believe the goal is to have him pitch 3 innings. Sasaki then out of the bullpen, 3 or 4 innings, Dave Roberts said. I know we were just discussing kind of the condensed schedule and needing to piggyback guys and stuff like that. But considering Sasaki, and you and I are in the same boat of understanding that he is still a prospect. He is still very young. He has, a lot of improvements and just development to make. But there's no question that he's supposed to be a starter, right? That's not, there's no denying that. So is it a little curious that of all pitchers, they're having Sasaki sort of piggyback in a scenario like this?
No, I think the calendar is working against them. Okay. And that's a reason why. I think that if they have a regular breaking of camp when normal opening day is, then this probably goes a little differently. The idea of piggybacking starters is not, it's not unusual, especially when a team has a lot of guys in the mix for rotation spots. They got to get those guys live innings somehow, and we may see the Dodgers in the next week or so start to schedule like more B games, that kind of thing. Because they got to get those guys innings and they got to get looks at those guys, right? So to answer the question, I think that this is all normal, but it is a little different for him because of the condensed schedule, and technically the season starts, pretty soon. And if they want him to be on that roster because it's in Japan, obviously, and all of that stuff, even if he may not make a start, I'm guessing we probably at least see him appear. And so for all of that, they got to find a way to kind of start to squeeze him in. And this is probably the easiest way to do it, aside from when he's going to start games on his own.
That's fair. And I think, Orlando brings up maybe a decent point as well. He says getting Sasaki later in the game to face weaker hitters, maybe MLB players out of the game by the time Roki comes in.
Yeah,
that is possible. I mean, if Yamamoto does go 3 innings, Sasaki might only see whatever regulars made the trip to Camelback at that point. for maybe one at bat type thing instead of, if he had started them and they're getting 2 or 3. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. Like I can understand your rationale that you laid out. I still, my stance more so is it's a little weird to do it. But the flip with somebody of Sasaki, like caliber, if you will. I know that sounds funny,
Sure.
but because of the expectations, because of all the projections type thing. But yeah, I mean, he's early, certainly into his career. He's not, they wouldn't have Clayton Kershaw piggyback somebody because his routine is his routine at this point. He's won a bunch of Cy Youngs and this and that. So I guess no harm, no foul there. It just struck me as a little curious. And I did see another comment. Iris was saying she doesn't mind the baby gloves, but don't start Sasaki in Tokyo. Dave Roberts over the weekend did sort of, I don't want to say backpedal because the Sasaki, how the Dodgers have handled their pitchers for the Tokyo series, at least in publicly naming them, has been Dave Roberts saying something to the effect of Yoshinobu Yamamoto makes sense for opening day, that he's like stuff like that. And if Sasaki were to pitch, I could see him starting that second game.
Sure. Yeah.
So they've committed to Yamamoto and Sasaki, but they have not necessarily committed to them. And Yamamoto does feel pretty firm at this point. For opening day.
I think that's the reason he started the Cactus League opener. It's the reason why he's already built up to 3 innings coming up this week. All of that stuff. They're building him up to be that starter. It feels like possibly Snell for game 2 because I don't see Sasaki getting there yet. But we'll see. We'll see. Like if they're saying Sasaki can throw 3 or 4 innings on Tuesday, then maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be like a workload question for the Tokyo series because if the Dodgers won because it is just 2 games, they can basically set their opening day roster with the 2 starters, maybe a third, just in case something happens and then go all bullpen for the rest of their pitching staff. And so they'll have a surplus of relievers. So if it's a glorified opener type thing, you can only go 3 or 4 innings, then they should be fine. But Dave Roberts did say over the weekend, like who's going to start the second game of the Tokyo series isn't necessarily Sasaki anymore. And he had left this possibility open by saying, yes, it would make sense to have him start the second game, or I could see that. But if something happens in spring training and we need to pivot, then we will. So as of now, we're sitting here March 2nd. If you needed to guess, and I think you did sort of tell me you were leaning. So are you thinking that it's not going to be Sasaki against the Cubs in that second game?
If I had to bet right now, I would say no. But again, I think it just sort of depends on how the buildup goes from this point forward. If they are giving him 3-4 innings, then he's kind of on track. He is kind of on track for that then. So I would say let's see how this next appearance goes, and then based on that, we may get a clearer idea, and maybe that's what Dave is thinking too. Let's kind of see how this goes for him, and then sort of maybe that's when the real assessment can be made. After that, so it's not out of the picture. I think he's in a position where he could do it if that's what they wanted, but it just sounds like they're a little unsure still.
And so let's say for whatever reason it isn't Sasaki. It's an if right now because as you said, Sasaki could look good against the Reds and continue a normal progression, and he's perfectly fine. If not Sasaki, are you going with? Did you say Snell for this? Would that be your prediction?
I think it could be Snell. I think it also could be Glasnow.
Yeah, that's who I think it is.
Yeah, I think it may be Glasnow. That home opener, like it's interesting because with these veteran guys, like they sometimes would like to get do them a service. Like let's say Glasnow was on the team last year, first game back in LA, real game back in LA, and maybe they give him the ball, Glasnow the ball, to return. The fans are back coming off the World Series. Maybe they do that for him and they start Snell instead in Tokyo. We'll see. I think they have a ton of options right now, assuming that everybody stays healthy and gets built up on schedule. So we'll see. if I had to choose two guys, I think it'd be Yamamoto and Glasnow as of right now.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Snell gets
the home opener.
The home opener at that point. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Dodgers have a ton of options, and that's the beauty of getting to cover a team like that. And if they decided Snell is starting in Tokyo and Glasnow starting the home opener, nobody's going to bat an eye. Nobody's going to say, "What are you doing?" Like, it would make sense, and that's the benefit of obviously having certainly as talented of a rotation as they do.
I do think it'll be interesting to see how they use Sasaki, though, if he doesn't start game 2. Because I do think that, and Major League Baseball is probably going to put a little, someone will make a phone call and say, hey, I know he's not starting this game, but, I think they want to see him. And maybe it's a situation where, because also, I don't think it's a situation where Yamamoto or whoever the guy who starts the second game is, I don't think it's a situation where they're like, we expect 5 out of you necessarily.
Right.
Like, they know the ramp up has been different for these games. And so, if Yamamoto is like a 4-inning guy and then the second guy is a 4-inning guy, that's a lot of outs to get for somebody else. And maybe it's Sasaki for 3 or 4 innings in one of those games.
Well, see, I think the more likely scenario at that point, if Sasaki doesn't start against the Cubs, I think they just move him to one of the exhibition games. And I know, like, I do agree with you. I think, and it's a slippery slope, right? MLB can't fully intervene with how teams handle and make decisions. But when you have I don't want to call this an event like the Tokyo series is going to be with all these Japanese players going, MLB certainly wants to make sure that it can be marketed, the best way, fully maximizing that. Craig Counsell, sort of, he presented it as a joke, but I think there was some truth to it when he said, of course Imanaga was going to start opening day for the Cubs. I think his exact quote was like, I didn't have a choice or something to that effect. There is some truth to that. So we'll see. But yeah, I think Sasaki pitches in Tokyo no matter what. I'm more inclined to believe now that it's Sasaki in an exhibition game rather than against the Cubs. But like you said, we'll see Tuesday night. And lucky for everybody, for all of us, Sasaki's Cactus League debut lines up. I mean, we would have done a live show anyway, but it lines up with the normal schedule we've been going with. So Anthony and I will be back on with you Tuesday night. The timing, we're not 100% sure on. It'll probably depend on when Sasaki enters the game and how many innings he ends up pitching, but we'll probably look to go live pretty quickly after he comes out of the game. So if it lines up with, the 8th inning, then so be it. If it's the 9th inning, then, we'll do that. So just be sure to kind of put that on your calendar now. And like I said, the easiest way is if you're just subscribed to our YouTube channel, ring the notification bell, you'll get an alert once we set up the live stream to do that. All right, final topic tonight before we answer some questions. We definitely want to leave time for that. If you follow Anthony on Twitter, was it yesterday? Was it yesterday or today that you got everybody upset with? There's been a lot of talk between other players about the Mets catcher. His name is escaping me right now, but he said the Mets lineup is better than the Dodgers lineup. Manny Machado has said the Padres are looking forward to taking down the Dodgers. Nestor Cortez said if all that happened, the Yankees would have won the World Series. I feel like I'm missing one that just came out too.
Yeah, I mean, it goes along with everything too. I think we've heard this offseason from Ricketts, from Steinbrenner, all of those guys. Just everyone has everyone has the Dodgers name in their mouth this offseason. And it's not particularly, complimentary of what the Dodgers have done during last fall or over the winter. And the whole, the Mets have the best lineup in the National League. Like, it's just a whole bunch of this stuff, right? And as if the Dodgers don't exist anymore. And so, yeah, when I heard the last of it, I think it was from one of the Mets guys, I think the catcher you mentioned. And it was like, hey, yeah, we were the best team. Oh, it was the Padres, I think. It was someone from the Padres said, yeah, we were the better team. And, the tweet yesterday on Saturday was, it was something along the lines of like, look, everyone's saying that they were better than the Dodgers last year. So it's no wonder that the Dodgers had to go and sign everybody and break baseball, because they clearly weren't that good, right? Like, and it's riled some people up. People who, like, their teams weren't even involved in the tweet or the discussion are chiming in, pissed off at the Dodgers. It's like I got Braves fans in the mentions too today. Like, it's silly. Like, and you can say what you want about, on paper the Padres they looked better, and sure, yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean they were the better team. The better teams typically win the divisions over the course of 162 games.
Good point.
You know what I mean? And the Dodgers had some injuries that kind of played into some of what the matchup on paper looked like, but it feels like it's a rash of like, well, every team the Dodgers played, essentially they were better than the Dodgers. Like the Dodgers were a complete underdog. And it was like, this was the best team in baseball for almost the entire season. And like, let's not forget, when the division was on the line for the Padres, they went into LA and got beat.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. The Padres went, I think, 8-5 against the Dodgers during the regular season last year. They went on the Padres went on a big run in the second half after the All-Star break, got back into, the NL West race. And as you mentioned, here came that regular season series, the final series last week of the regular season. If the Padres, I think they needed to sweep it, or if they had even just won 2 of 3, like they suddenly if they swept, I think the Padres would have maybe been in first place or cut it to like a 1-game lead for the Dodgers, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to say they folded, but like kind of did. Like they Dodgers took care of business at that point. And so as you're saying, like over the course of a season, like that, we see who the best teams in baseball are. And ironically, the playoffs come around and we see that the best teams in baseball most of the time don't end up winning the World Series. Last year, that matched up ironically with the Dodgers having arguably I don't want to say their weakest team, because I think it does a disservice to Ohtani, Freeman, Mookie, Muncy, like all the guys that were around, but they had 3 starting pitchers. Like, yeah. And to your point, the Braves fans chiming in. We had somebody replying to our website account something about the Dodgers can't complain about injuries because the Braves had, lost X, Y, and Z. And look, I get it. Like the Braves had substantial injuries, but you can't look at who the Dodgers lost and say, oh, that was nothing. And so it's just funny to see how the conversation, the narratives, the perception has all sort of shifted.
Yeah, and they had to patchwork that rotation together for like the whole second half of the season, essentially. And then in the playoffs, just sort of like piecemeal, sort of like, hey, give us what you can. I mean, they were throwing bullpen games, it seemed like every third game during the entire playoff run.
Yep.
Like, so, I mean, you can say, they could say what they want, but I think the Dodgers proved that they were clearly the best team. The Padres, I think, were the only team that had a legitimate claim to like, man, we got beat. We thought we were the better team going into that series. And part of that had to do with the Dodgers rotation injuries. They threw a bullpen game in an elimination game against the Padres, and they got shut out. So sure, you might have thought you were the better team on paper. And like we might have even said like, yeah, on paper, because of the Dodgers pitching concerns, it's tough. The Dodgers have a tough road ahead of them. When you get shut out, like basically 3 games in a row, and you're playing to eliminate that other team, you don't get to say too much.
Yep. I agree. You hit the nail on the head. And the Nestor Cortez stuff, you and I haven't had a chance to discuss this. I know Jeff and Blake did last week. I mean, remove the teams involved. If a player from a losing team says, if this happened, 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 then that would have happened. That's not sports. Like that's living in a fantasy land. Like, yes, if I won the lotto last year, if I won the lotto next year, if I won the lotto and if I win the lotto in a week, then I'll have it. Like, sure, but that's not living in any sort of reality. And so Nestor Cortez, like I get, like I can understand kind of the competitive standpoint of, oh man, like we made it there, we were good. Like you want to believe in your team. I
Sure.
do get that. But to sit there and list off like 5 things that are ifs that needed to change for you to win a World Series doesn't mean that you should have won the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees almost got swept.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to be able to convince anyone who watched any of that series that the Yankees were the better team. I mean, in aside from like game 1, in just about all of the other games the Dodgers won, the Yankees were either dominated in every facet or totally melted down in game 5.
And the game that the Yankees won, the Dodgers punted because they were playing for the next day and or days ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, going back to those pitching concerns, and it was the Dodgers felt it was in their best interest to sort of say like, okay, we'll run this out there. If it happens not to work, we're going to kind of fold up the tent and we're going to look ahead. And we had debates on this show about if that was the right move or whatever. And it ended up really not mattering. They dropped one game and then they went out and they won it the next day or the day after, whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, the Yankees were beaten essentially in every facet. There was like some weird stat where like the Yankees like were better than the Dodgers in something like, it felt kind of insignificant, but like, I don't know if it was like the Yankees led, or I mean, I don't even remember what it was, to try to justify like that kind of stance. But like, I mean, okay, you lose game one the way you lose it. Sure. Okay. Maybe the Yankees thought we should have won that game. Okay, cool. You then come out the next day and Yamamoto one hits you over the course of like 5 innings or whatever it was. And you really never had a chance in that game.
Yeah.
Same in game 3. You get thoroughly beaten and you have no answers for the Dodgers bullpen. Like, to have all of this stuff happen over and over in that series and to be like, well, we were still the better team is just stupid.
Yeah.
And Mr. Cortez of all people should just shut the hell up.
I think last thing, we don't need to keep going on about this. We want to get to questions, but if the World Series had gone 7 games and Nestor Cortez says, obviously, like if I didn't give up that grand slam to Freeman, like it was a crazy hit, he could have easily popped it. Like, sure, fine. Like, okay, like I'll listen to that. Like the series swung on one momentum thing, but as we've discussed and outlined, like the Yankees pretty much were not necessarily in that. Like, yes, they were taking leads, but what good is a lead that you're taking if you can't protect it? That's not, spoiler alert, that's not a good team. Second, last thing, I'll end with this, because we did discuss, we were debating the game that the Dodgers punted in the World Series. That turned into a debate because the offense started to come back from a crazy, like that game looked like it was over. And then all of a sudden the Dodgers hit their way back into it. But then because they were relying on the low leverage relievers, it got away again. And so that's why we ended up having that debate. So again, if the Dodgers had not done that, there's a decent, like Nestor Cortez, here's an if the Dodgers used their high leverage relievers in game 4, Dodgers would have swept the World Series. Done.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
All right, let's end on that. Let's get to some questions from everybody. As a reminder, start it with the word question in all caps. That helps Anthony and I pick it out. And while we wait for these to come in, Anthony, I wanted to text you kind of, we were going over the plan for tonight. I said we'd talk some ABS because the captain, the one and only Austin Barnes, he's a perfect 5 for 5 back there and getting calls overturned. I know I was on with you and Jeff when I was out at spring training because I'd gone to Cactus League Media Day. They sort of introduced this ABS system and explained to us how it'd be working. Now that we've seen it, I know, maybe we haven't seen a ton of games, but have seen it in action. Yeah. I will say, like, I'm sold. It's fine. Like it's quick enough. That was my biggest concern. And I was skeptical of Morgan Sword, the MLB executive, saying it only takes a few seconds, but it truly does. It is very quick. The replay happens right away. So I'm fully on board. What's been your read of things?
I like it. I'm okay with them limiting the challenges. I'm okay with how it all is set up currently. I have no gripes about that. I think at least as you sort of ease this thing in, and look, we're nowhere near, unfortunately, I think we're nowhere near it being a regular season thing yet. So as it gets introduced, I'm fine with the way it works right now. I think it's good. We have gotten to see, with the lack of accountability, I think with some of the umpiring behind the plate, we've gotten to see and people complain about the human element, okay, we don't need to go down that road, but it's gotten egregious. There's some umpires who are calling, this is not a joke. There are some umpires who are calling strikes that are on the chalk of the opposite side batter's box. Yeah. And it's what are you supposed to do with that? That changes the complexion of a game when you have an umpire doing things like that. So if we have to take some of the human element away so that the human element doesn't impact the game so much that it kind of ruins the competitive balance, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and Deborah, who's watching this, says she was there. She saw Austin Barnes challenging all those calls, and yeah, I mean it was great for Barnes. The Adam Hidari, I forget what his he had a rough day behind the plate. I mean, they were not borderline calls that Barnes was getting overturned.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that goes to your point of, hey, like if it's so egregious, like that stuff does need to be cleaned up. All right, we have some questions here. Larry wants to know, how important is it for Mookie having a real quality and long-term starting second baseman next to him at shortstop? He mentions like Edman, obviously, as we were discussing earlier in the show tonight. Indications are pointing towards Tommy Edman being the starting second baseman, at least to begin this season. This was actually something I thought of too, with how much Mookie had been paired. I needed to go back and look at his game logs this spring, but he's been paired with a few different shortstops this spring, and I wondered and I thought of it after I left, so I didn't get a chance to ask Dave Roberts, like, is that a negative or a positive for Mookie? Because if the Dodgers are looking to play multiple players at second base, then sure, he needs to develop a relationship, a rapport, thank you, with the different guys. If it's going to be Tommy Edman mainly and primarily, then obviously you want them lined up. How do you see kind of Larry's question, like how important, like one way or the other, is that?
I don't think it's critical. It's a nice to have. I don't think it's a must have at this point. Like when the regular season starts, we talked about how that whole second baseman center field situation. I don't think that 3 guys should be rotating in and out of second base every week. I don't think that's ideal either. But at this point, I don't think it's critical for Mookie's development that like he's paired, let's say, with Tommy Edman every time that Mookie's playing shortstop. I don't think that that's necessary. These guys get a ton of work in the backfield too. And so when it comes to things like double plays and all of that sort of stuff, like they're getting plenty of reps there. So like I said, for now, it would be a nice to have. I don't think it's necessarily like you got to do this to help Mookie out. Like, I don't think that's the thing right now.
Yeah. Good. Larry, that's a good question. We appreciate it.
Good question.
Let's see here. Mike is jumping way ahead. He wants to know who the biggest surprise this World Series will be. I'll leave it open-ended for you, Anthony. It could be a Dodger or it could not be a Dodger. It's up to you.
Oh boy. I'm just cycling through teams here. It's going to have to be an American League team if I want to go a non-Dodger, because the Dodgers will be there, right? So Mike Trout. Let's get a Freeway Series World Series.
Was not expecting that. I wasn't sure
expecting myself to say it either.
I wasn't sure if maybe there was a Mike Trout trade involved at that point.
No, right, on the Dodger side, I'll say this. On the Dodger side, this is a funner question to answer like this. I will say like a surprise breakout guy for a World Series this year on the Dodger side would be like a Conforto.
I was thinking Conforto too.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is, like the Dodgers, when you're looking at the Dodgers roster, like there's almost an all-star at every position.
Yeah.
If not Conforto, I'll go, and we should have maybe worked him into the show tonight. Will Smith. I think maybe he could potentially bounce back, even though it seems like, for the bone bruise in his left ankle, for whatever reason, has been an issue since June. But the talent is certainly there. So I'll do Will Smith maybe being a surprise, only from the standpoint of how he ended last year and kind of some of his recent trends of struggling in the second half. I think.
Sure. Yeah.
I think he could be a surprise. All right. Let's see. I'm not exactly sure how to say this name, so I apologize, but they want to know, how does Shohei Ohtani look so far to you guys during practice and games, both pitching and hitting? So from the pitching standpoint, obviously the biggest development there is that Ohtani is pitching out of the windup now. And it seems like he's going to take that into the regular season. He's just kind of explained it as a hitter, you always want to try and be better, and that applies to him as a pitcher as well. So that's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's kind of hard, at least for me, I'm not a scout, to really fully dissect what Ohtani is doing with his bullpen sessions. By all accounts, they seem to be going well. So that's that. Hitting standpoint, I mean, he had a home run his first at bat.
Yeah.
Maybe you could argue, if you want to, that he's gone downhill since then because he's not had another home run, but he did the White Sox had a perfect game going before Ohtani's leadoff single in, I believe it was the 3rd or 4th inning today. So that is a feather in his cap as well. But I mean, look, like Ohtani looks fine. He's on track, if you will. Anthony, I don't know if there's anything specific you want to add to that.
No, not really. The homer looked great. I mean, he's the show. It looks like, you know, any concern. Let's say this. It looks great because any concerns there might have been about the shoulder or whatever. You know, I think that the fact that he did what he did, hit it to the opposite field, sort of shows like he's doing all right. And then I think he answered a question too about his shoulder, like he was shaking it. And he was like, no, nothing there. Totally fine. Like just sort of, I was just doing that, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, his health is the most important thing. And so I think considering that, he's looked great on both sides from all the reports I've seen.
Yeah. Here Cole says, biggest surprise, Bote wins World Series MVP playing for the Giants.
Yeah.
That would definitely be a surprise in a lot of ways. Hawaiian Kira with the super chat. I think you might have been charged twice for the same question. So throw in a bonus question. Obviously, don't do a super chat for it, but we'll answer it as well. It says, who are your quote ones to watch in the Dodgers organization or MLB? I mean, the Dodgers, I feel like, especially with their rotation now, like every night is, I mean, I pretty much watch every game anyway, because this is the job that we do. But with their rotation specifically, I think like every night there's going to be a reason to see that starting pitcher. If not, then Ohtani leading off either the top of the first or the bottom of the first.
Yeah.
So that's the Dodgers. I'm trying to think across baseball. I mean, I don't know. Is there anybody come to mind for you?
Yeah, I'll go with non-Dodger just because we talk, you know, we sort of talk about the Dodgers constantly. It's what we're here for. But I'll say that like if Dodger fans want to watch a team, like pay attention to a team and watch like a fun player, Ellie De La Cruz is
a good choice.
Legitimate entertainment for the Cincinnati Reds. If you haven't gotten to watch this guy play, watch him. Speed, power, glove. He's fun to watch at shortstop. Just a lot of entertainment in that player, Ellie De La Cruz. So, you know, I would say that if you're looking for a game that's not featuring the Dodgers at any point, check out a Reds game because he's fun.
And you can, while you're checking out Ellie De La Cruz, you can see a little bit of utility man Gavin Lux over there as well. I'll kind of hedge. I do enjoy. I mean, look, the Dodgers keep me plenty busy, so admittedly, it's hard for me to tune into a lot of other games and players. I like keeping track of kind of the former Dodgers, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, even Cody Bellinger, like the guys that had a lot of either developed with the Dodgers and or had a lot of success with the team. Adding to that list, and he made his first start today for the Red Sox, Walker Buehler. He'll be somebody that Red Sox are obviously an East Coast team. If I happen to be home and I see that he's starting at 4:00 and I have a window to watch that before really getting entrenched with some Dodger stuff, I think that's what I'll be doing this season. And Laura agrees with that.
He looks weird in that uniform.
Yeah,
the number 0 and everything. It looks weird for me.
Yeah, very weird. Hawaiian Kira, reminder: if you have a second question, go ahead and throw it in here because I think you may have been charged twice for the same super. Oh, here we go. Anyone you want the Dodgers to add to their roster this season as a wish list? I mean, it's tough to say right now because
like if we're trying to be realistic about it, like a realistic wish list, right? Because like if I said like Ellie De La Cruz, like that's not happening. Right. But like okay, then I'm thinking like center fielder, second base type. So I would say let's think center field, and we'll keep Edman at second base. Who's out there?
Is that Luis Robert's name?
I mean, I think that's the first name that came to my mind too. It's probably Luis Robert.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, if at this point any wish list would need to be to plug a hole in, as you mentioned, like the Dodgers pretty much only have 2 at this point. All right, let's answer a few more of these. Elishiva says, is there a chance Frasso might get to make his MLB debut with the Dodgers in 2025? She saw that he was optioned today to minor league camp. I mean, I think there's a chance he potentially, depending on how things break, that he makes his MLB debut this year. He is obviously coming back from shoulder surgery, so that is a factor. I guess if he makes his debut, it's because there have been a bunch of injuries. So maybe I should backtrack that.
Yeah.
But 2025, maybe not. I think 2026 is definitely the safer bet.
I would agree.
All right. Eden, you're saying you had a question. I'm not seeing it, Eden. Actually, no. Here we go. Obviously, the break between the NLCS and the World Series allowed Freddie to rest, but he also said he found his swing, which he hadn't had for a while. With his start to spring training, could he go next level?
Sort of a down year for Freddie by like his standards, right? Like he's still one of the best offensive first basemen in the game. But I think he even said like it was sort of not up to my level of expectations. So yeah, I think Eden might be right. Like I think you could see a mostly healthy Freddie Freeman, really kind of find it and like if there were a guy to like say like get off to a hot start like in April, I think Freddie could be that guy. I mean, he already looks really, really locked in so far. It's only been a handful of games or whatever, but yeah, he looks good. And I think considering whatever it was that he found during the World Series and where he wasn't completely healthy, like he's keeping that feeling, man. Look out. He's dangerous.
Yeah. And I do want to add, I agree with Freeman's season last year. And it already was, I don't want to say something, but sort of falling, and this has been critical, nitpicking, falling short of what we've come to expect with him. He dealt with multiple injuries, yes. I think, though, the biggest thing was that Max had been sick since the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And that took a turn. Like, that is basically the second half of the season where things took a serious turn. And so I think that was weighing on him probably more so than the impact that injuries may have had. Now that Max is doing well, Freddie is obviously healthier now than I think he was last season, even though he says he does have to manage his ankle and have to tape it and things like that. It could be kind of a breakout year for him, if you will. And to your point, his swing, it looks good. And he maybe most importantly says it feels good. So the results are sort of matching his feeling at the plate right now, which is obviously encouraging for players when you hear them say that. We have another question from Larry. He wants to know why there's not more talk about Outman and Pages platooning in center field. I think just roster construction, there's not enough room. It doesn't make sense for the Dodgers to carry both of these guys on their roster to have them platoon out in center field. And ideally, one of them just becomes the regular starter. So that's probably why that is.
I think part of that too, quickly, is because whoever doesn't make it, you want that person to get regular at bats. And if they're spending a lot of time on the bench, then they don't get those at bats.
Yeah. Question from I don't think this is Machine Gun Kelly, but Machine Kelly says, who do you predict will have the most prolific career? Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone, Emmett Sheehan, or River Ryan? A lot of injured guys on this list.
Yeah, that's a good question. Good list. Stuff-wise, I think Bobby Miller is really nasty, but I think if we're going to say who's going to have prolific career, however you define prolific, I'm going to say River Ryan.
Yeah, it's my pick also.
I think he's got the combination of the stuff, and like I think his ceiling is really, really high. And he's starting to figure it out. Looked like he was starting to figure it out before he got hurt. I like him. I like that makeup there.
Yeah, I agree. Ellis Shiva Jones, and again, if you have a question, just start with the word question in all caps. We'll get to it. We have time for maybe a couple more after this. And if you've been with us, I see a lot of our regulars. It could be food. It could be off topic. It doesn't need to be baseball specific, but of course, if they are baseball questions, we're always happy to answer just those. Going back to David Bote, she said if David Bote is in all caps really performing. David Bote is in all caps really performing to try to get on the Dodgers 40-man roster. He's an infielder. The Dodgers want to use him. How might it work given they seem to actually need an outfielder? I mean, I don't want to fully rehash kind of the conversation we did at Shiva. So once we're done here, if you want to rewind, we did dive into David Bote. It looks like, if he was an outfielder, I guess maybe at that point it's a little bit more of a conversation, but given his position and sort of needing to be added onto the 40-man roster, it just doesn't necessarily look likely. And as Anthony said, we can't necessarily have it both ways. When players struggle, we'll sit up here and say, it is just spring training. Don't necessarily get overly concerned. When a player is really hot, we also have to give that same sort of consideration that, in some sense it is spring training. And as I mentioned, we've seen this in the past with Brad Miller and other players who come up and have really big springs, and they just don't end up latching on.
And I'll say this quickly too, that I didn't mention before on this conversation, on this topic. If the Dodgers happen to lose David Bote, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
they'll be all right. And David Bote's on the kind of contract he's on for a reason.
Yeah, definitely. All right, here. 2 fun questions that I think we can end with. Hawaiian Kira, Anthony, hopefully you have a good answer because I don't. She wants to know, which Oscar-nominated film did you enjoy this year? I'm not good with this because I'm not one of those people that goes and says like, oh, I need to see this movie because it's getting Oscar buzz type thing. So I'm not even sure. I mean, I think you're Googling a list. I'm not even sure if I saw any Oscar-nominated movies.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I tried to watch Emilia Perez. Wasn't for me. I like
the Netflix one.
Yeah, and the musical. I like all the people in it, so I was like, I'm gonna give this a try. Could not do it. I turned it off about 20 minutes in. Conclave was good. I liked I don't know that it'll win. I don't think it'll win Best Picture, but I thought it was good.
What about
I
Soul and Style?
I enjoyed that one. That was a solid watch.
Soul and Style is asking about Dune 2.
I never saw the first Dune.
Same. Dune.
Kind of not my genre of movie. Yeah. So I mean, from the people who do like it, they say it's great. I'll take their word for it. The Brutalist, I did see that. That was solid. For me, this crop, and I am a movie person. I watch a lot of movies, but like for this Best Picture crop, like nothing really stands out to me as like that was great.
Yeah, and I apologize for I went to, when I say Dune instead of Dune. It tells you I had not seen the first one. I have not seen the second one, and I probably won't ever see either of them. All right. We have a baseball question from Laura, and then we'll finish with one more that's off topic. She wants to know, how will Conforto do offensively this season? What is your guess? I mean, I think he'll be maybe more or less average, league average type thing. Go through some what word am I, like hot streaks here and there, and then maybe go through some cold streaks that have fans upset, but I think he'll be kind of about average. I think he'll benefit from also not having to play his home games at Oracle and Dodger Stadium being more hitter friendly.
Yeah. If anything above 100 OPS plus or weighted runs created plus, anything above 100, I think is a bonus for him. I think anything in the 110-ish range is like, yeah, this team all of a sudden that takes this lineup from being like really good to like great. Like seriously, like I think that's all, that's where their margins are right now. So for him, I think if he's an average league average hitter, he's fine in this lineup. He's fine.
Yeah, definitely. All right, last one. Odo and New York boy. Ohtani boy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to know if we could talk about cheese since Jeff isn't here. And have you been included? Has Jeff unloaded this rant on you yet?
No.
Have you been spared?
I've seen like tweets about it at Jeff. I don't know exactly what it's about though.
So basically, Jeff, it may have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. He texts me. We're doing a Sunday night show. He says, "Hey, I have a food take that's gonna probably blow your mind," something to that effect. And I said, "Okay, well, don't tell me. Like, I want my first reaction to just be on the show." He ends up coming on here and spewing some nonsense about cheese being overrated and it doesn't need to be in burritos. That if you could taste the cheese in a burrito, then you need other things added to it because you shouldn't be able to taste the cheese. I completely disagree. 95% of our chat completely disagrees. Then he takes it a step further and says, if he's having a cold sandwich, it doesn't need to have cheese on it, which I still disagree with, and the majority of our followers also disagreed. And so that has since morphed into, because you know how we work into, Jeff hates cheese is basically the our company line at this point.
I mean, that's where I would have gone with it too.
Exactly. See, like that's what, yes. Like there's
I could not disagree with those takes more. I'm assuming they're being reported to me accurately. Jeff is wrong.
Yes.
Um, I typically have some respect for Jeff's food takes. He is now knowing about this cheese thing. It's taking a hit. It also took a hit when he got to spring training this last week, and his first stop was Raising Cane's, and he was like, had to do this. Like, I mean, like it was a no-brainer for anyone. And I was like, dude, really? And he replied to me like that I was in denial about Raising Cane's. I was like, it's fine. It's chicken fingers, dude. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine. Like, I'm not mad that you went there. Like, these aren't gourmet chicken fingers that the entire world must try, Jeff. Like if you're going somewhere like to Phoenix that has the Phoenix area has a lot of good food, probably an underrated food city actually. And he went to Raising Cane's as his first stop. Like, Jeff.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I saw that. That was funny. I do agree. Like I like Raising Cane's, but yes, it is ultimately like I like Raising Cane's, but I have also said that their chicken fingers are like the third or fourth best item on their menu. Like
I've heard. I don't really eat Raising Cane's, but I have heard that from a couple other people as well. Like the chicken fingers aren't even the best thing on the menu.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was kind of. But anyway, so now Anthony, I apologize, but you now have the knowledge of Jeff hating cheese, and it is something that we need to kind of carry forward with. I will say that Jeff and Blake did end up at I think Del Falco's,
Oh, the Italian place. Yeah.
So I know Bill Plunkett recommended it to them, and so they checked it out. And Jeff did get, I think, some sort of, I think it might have been a cold cut trio type sandwich, and it did have cheese on it. So he survived. He ate it, and I know he's not on here tonight, but next time he is back on here, he'll live to tell you guys about it.
Yeah, I saw that tweet. And him and Blake got a giant calzone, I saw.
Yes, yeah, they split that. I think they had some chicken parm and stuff like that. So yeah, they at least salvaged it from Raising Cane's. I know that Blake, I think, went to Culver's once or twice while he was out. I think they all did. Maybe their final night that they were out there. So
anyway. It's a good thing that Jeff's baseball takes are as good as they are.
Definitely, because and look, I'm somebody who loves cheese, so bringing an anti-cheese stance to me, like I'm not having it. I did see somebody, I think it was Machine Kelly, saying he doesn't taste cheese in his bowl from Chipotle. I completely disagree. But I am also, nobody believes me, but I've tried to explain that I am a super taster. And so my taste, but like I taste flavors more strongly than the average person. And so maybe that is why sometimes I feel that I can taste like cheese and things like that. I see you're not convinced.
The next time we're all in person, like a blind test of things.
Yeah. So did you see, and I apologize for those of you who have stuck with us. Yes, we are closing out on food as we do pretty often, especially in spring training. So bear with us. I did a pastrami taste test. I don't know if you saw when I explained that.
I did not know.
Okay. So my aunt set it up. She got pastrami sandwiches from Langer's and from Cantor's, two obviously famous delis in LA. And I have deemed Cantor's to be the best pastrami sandwich in all of greater Los Angeles. It was a blind taste test. It came down to Cantor's. Their bread was a little bit softer. I just thought it was a little bit better than Langer's. Still very good. If you sit one of those sandwiches down in front of me, I'm not complaining. You don't need to tell me where it's from. You could say it's from one of those two places, and I say great.
Yeah.
But I have provided our great followers and listeners with the definitive answers to who has the best pastrami sandwich, which actually, by the way, this reminds me, unfortunately, the pantry is closing. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah, I did see that. I did. Yeah.
Yeah. LA institution. I didn't care. I went once. I didn't particularly care for it. I didn't get it. But I mean, sad for obviously those workers and all that. All right. I think we can close this one out. Well, here we do. Machine Kelly wants to know: can you address Kike razzing on Jeff's impersonation of Captain Miller from Saving Private Ryan? So yeah, I didn't see that Jeff was holding our microphone in these interviews, these scrums that Blake and Jeff were part of at spring training last week, and apparently, the microphone, I guess, may have been shaking a little bit. I didn't really see it in our video, but Kike did. And so he was mid-answer answering a question from Jeff didn't ask him. Somebody else did. And he just says, like, why are you shaking so much? And then continues answering his question. And so Kike, obviously, big personality, likes to give us a hard time. So there was no ill will or intent from him on it. But yeah, certainly kind of funny. And Machine Kelly will have to get Jeff. I think he might not be back on until a week from tonight. So we'll have to, actually maybe Thursday night. I forgot. We'll have to, if you're able to join us, then you can ask him and we'll see if he can give us his take on it. Hawaiian Kira wants me to do more blind taste tests. I am all for it. There was the family that I was with doing it suggested maybe we do tacos next. Obviously in LA, there's certainly no shortage of options there. So certainly I would be open to that. Cole says Jeff is in cheese withdrawals. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's why he was shaking.
Yeah. All right. We've run this one out longer than maybe we needed to. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We got up to about 1,500 at one point on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We appreciate the support you guys have continued to show us. I know that, Lakers are playing tonight. The Oscars are on, all that good stuff. A lot of different distractions, and a bunch of you guys chose to spend your Sunday night with Anthony and I. We greatly appreciate it. If you missed the intro to this video, as a reminder, check out Lakers Nation if you live in Southern California and you want to potentially attend the game on Sunday, March 16th. In the crypto.com suite we've partnered with them on a special promotion for some tickets to join some of our staff and other fans. So be sure to do that. And of course, you already know, keep following us at DodgerBlue1958, reading at DodgerBlue.com, subscribing to our YouTube channel, podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get it. We are there. If you can subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff, it helps us out. Once again, that is Anthony. I'm Matthew. We'll see you Tuesday night. It'll be after Roki Sasaki makes his Cactus League debut, so it should be another great show. Talk to you then.